Welcome, everyone, to Cyber Judo. I'm your host, Christian Scott, with the team here at Tantalum Security. Welcome back to episode 4 of our 6-part webcast series on responsible AI adoption. Last time, we had the opportunity to talk a little bit about hunting the shadow AI and getting more visibility into AI utilization across the organization. Today, we're going to be taking the next logical step and talking about how you can actually implement the governance structure, both from a culture standpoint and a technical controls standpoint, to adopt AI in a responsible manner. As always, I'm joined by my compliance bestie, Pat, here with the compliance and ethics group team. Pat brings a lot of the governance and compliance perspective, really focusing on that culture, the cement across the organization, so to speak. While I classically am always talking about the technical, nerdy aspects and the widgets and the ding dongs and all that kind of stuff and all those nuts and bolts there. That being noted, Pat, why don't you remind our attendees just a little bit about yourself and your background, good sir, as we start to jump into things.
Well, thank you for the invite again. It's always a pleasure to do this with you. So my background is in ethics, compliance, financial crime, and governance and risk management. So I was an RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police senior investigator in financial crime for many, many years. I had hair there when I started, and I've been doing risk management and helping an organization build their capacity for risk management for many decades now. And also a tech nerd, but definitely not at your level, my friend.
Yeah, I can't get over the fact that the dynamic between you and I, given my ethical hacking background, your background in serving the community, is like it's always like a game of like cops and robbers, in a really friendly manner, of course. Team, for everyone who's joining us on LinkedIn Live and YouTube, just remember that we love to hear your questions throughout the session. So please drop them in the chat. We see those come in. We'll be happy to respond to those, help make this not just an educational session that's entertaining, but also a conversation and a deeper discussion. Actually, I got a couple of really good questions that are lined up from our previous session, so I'm excited about that. One of them, actually, I think, talking about recent news here when it comes to AI transparency and data labeling and all that fun stuff there. But as a reminder for everyone, everything that we're going to be sharing in this series comes from a real-world experience being practitioners. None of it is a hypothetical guidance or anything like that. This is all the types of thoughts and experiences and recommendations that we provide to a lot of organizations that we work with on a daily basis. And these sessions are not about sponsorships. These sessions are not about ads. These sessions are not about self-aggrandizement or anything like that. This is all open source insights. We want to help educate the community and making sure that we turn this into a greater conversation about the responsible AI adoption. As we go to jump in here, I just want to remind everyone, again, this is part of our 6-part series here. So what that means is that we got the rest of the masterclass that'll be coming up. So there's 2 more sessions. One is going to be about hacking the AI. I'm really excited about that one. Obviously, that's my background, so that's my deal. And then the last one will be really tying a bow on everything. As we've talked about the AI Tiger team, and we've talked about thinking about, buy versus build, and then the aspects of how do you hunt down the shadow AI, and then obviously this conversation here. So don't forget to take a gander at the AI Masterclass series here that's up on screen, and you can look at some of the previous LinkedIn invites and events with the recordings there if you haven't had the opportunity to see them already. So, well, all that being noted, Pat, good sir, on the last session, we were talking a little bit about hunting the shadow AI, building that visibility, getting an AI inventory into place so that you know where AI is in the organization, where it's starting to touch your data and all that kind of stuff, right? So these conversations, that logical next step, that, once you can see it, how do you actually govern it in a way from a technical control standpoint and from a culture standpoint across the business? So I think for a lot of organizations, there's this initial instinct to block the AI, write a policy, lock it down, but that rarely works. And the reason being is it pushes the adoption of AI for staff members into the shadows. People are going to want to leverage these technologies. People want to
Yes.
get the benefits out of these technologies. And so it's not just about writing a policy document and putting in a shared folder and then hoping that everyone's going to read it and follow it. It's a much bigger thing. So starting right there, Pat, why do so many organizations, when they're writing their AI policies, does it feel like it's a more performative activity rather than being practical? And can you provide a little bit of insights on what practical looks like?
Well, when you talk about organization, it's like being a parent. When you are writing policies or you're making rules in your house so that you're securing things, your automatic reaction is to say no if it's dangerous. You're going to write policy, and the reactionary aspect is to write policy to stop bad things from happening. But really, there's no thought about the context. When we talk about performing policy, it's just writing policies for the sake of writing policy and thinking that people are going to first read it and abide by it. When you know perfectly well, whether it's your teenagers or your employees, if the pressure is there for them to perform, to do things, and the policy doesn't make sense, or it's too restrictive, or it's too complex, well, people are not going to abide by it. So the automatic reaction of just writing a policy for the sake of policy and thinking that people are going to abide by it, they're not going to use shadow AI, or they're going to be applying the right rules, and that it's not going to happen. You need to really look at policy as a way to help people and guide them through the process, that critical thinking process. So, but you got to make it so that it's relevant to their function, relevant to the actual workflow that they're using. Because it's all, at the end of the day, about behavior, about people.
Mhm.
How is your employee going to look at this and say, oh yeah, it makes sense to me. I understand why the policy is written and what I need to do. So what is my process? What's the input? What's the output? Is there exception to this? So
Mhm.
it's not about writing pages and pages, but make it relevant and practical for the people. And just like with your teenager, if you just say, do as I say, you think they're going to listen? Well, of course not. This employees are the same, especially within the organization where there's huge amount of pressure to perform. And if the policy is too restricted, or you're not allowing them to grow, to experiment, to look at different innovative way to reach the same goal, then it's a recipe for disaster. So when you write policy or governance, it's about the workflow, and to provide context for your employees that makes sense to them. So if it makes sense, if it's clear, and it's something that's practical to their work, you're
Mhm.
much more likely for them to actually abide by it. And you provide them not just a policy, but examples.
That's a really great point you make there, especially in regards to focusing on what's relevant for folks. So,
Yes.
an easy tip for a lot of organizations is this. So you have, maybe your AI risk management policy that could be really comprehensive, but there's also what staff need to be aware of, what staff need to follow. And so
Yes.
one trick is splitting out your AI acceptable use policy, which might be, let's say, something like 3 to 4 pages, rather than giving them the entire AI risk management strategy and how
Exactly.
it gets done and whatnot, right?
Kristen, at the end of the day, you need to answer two basic questions for the employees. Is why should I care? I I relate it to why should I give a shit? Okay, why should I care about this? Why is it important for me? And how is it going to help me do my job better? If you can answer those two questions in that policy, that approach, then they're much more likely to say, oh yeah, of course, I'm going to follow. Because there's consequences for not applying, of course.
Yeah.
But the thing is, from a practical operational perspective, you can't just plaster a policy and and expect them to follow it if it doesn't make sense, if it's not relatable to them.
Yeah. And like especially I feel it nowadays with like AI brain where you don't want to read a lot of type of stuff, right? And so like another good trick is like here are the top 10 do's, here are the top 10
Yes.
don'ts. And making it like specific and concise, making it easy for folks to understand, and then giving obviously to your point, Pat, a path towards further education, being able to ask questions, engage the Tiger team and all that type
Yeah.
of.
Because if they're afraid to ask a question, if they fear the repercussion by raising their hand, they're not going to do it. So if you provide them not just the policies, but little guidelines, little infographics, to-do lists, reminders that are very practical to their work function, they're more likely because they're going to put it on the wall. It says, oh, I got to check this, I got to check this, I got to check this.
Yeah. Well, that's the perfect segue into like
Yeah,
how you train staff members in the process of adopting AI, especially to reduce that shadow AI use and like risky workarounds and all that.
yeah, and when you talk about training today, you have to remove the idea that we're going to be doing it once a year. The code of ethics training once a year.
Mm.
The traditional segue into that training period and doing it for an hour or 3 hours. You have to change the way you do training, especially in the era of AI. Things are changing so quickly. The scope, the technology is evolving, and it needs to be tailored to the function. I mentioned it before, but it's that much more important, especially when we talk about AI, agentic AI, how to use it. It's not just plug it in and expect people to use it. That's the recipe again for disaster. So it is how are people deploying it, how people are using it, and how is it working within their specific workflow, their specific function. So yes, it can take a little more, but it's not about providing an hour of training. It could be micro training that are scalable and modular so that it can be applied to multiple functions and having these elements that's specific to that function. Because, if you look at the statistics, 85% of decision makers use shadow AI compared to 31% the rank and file. And that's from a TrueTech 2026 study. What this told me is that higher level leaders have access to AI, much more access. They have chance to experiment with it a little more, where the rank and file, because of the daily pressure, don't have that access. So they will more likely then cause problems. So you have to be able to provide the training and the infrastructure. So it's not just about the training, but continuously monitoring, continuous upgrade, providing them the tools, the access to toolkits, to a sandbox where they can experiment in security and safety. So it doesn't, threaten the database or data sets or policy. And providing them toolkits in terms of pre-approved prompt libraries, pre-approved templates, and select and identify those champions, those AI champions. In any organization, you're going to have people that are more tech savvy, that are more ingrained. It'll easier for them to apply this. It could be younger or older, but use and leverage those people to become mentors within the organization. So
Mhm.
it's not just about the policy and the traditional training, but it's continuous improvement where the people themselves within your team can mentor others and celebrate this, put them and recognize that. And it needs also to have part of the communication plan because it's not just about the regular training or access to training, but is it part of the communication plan to continuously monitor and continue to remind people, hey, this is what happened, with the latest headlines in
Mhm.
terms of how agentic AI has broken out of the sandbox and it caused it pain. Well, what lessons can we learn from this? So that you're continuously telling people and reminding people you need to be aware of this, and this is how we're helping you.
Um, something I've seen that's worked out really well, especially for organizations that are a little bit bigger, like above 25 or
Yep.
50 employees, is, the Tiger team engaging different departmental heads in like focus group conversations.
Yes.
And a lot of times, people don't realize the technology is being, placed in front of them. And so they need to be educated a little bit first. What's the universe of possibilities? Hey, look, this is what AI can do really well. This is all the stuff it doesn't do so well today. And now that we've educated you on what's possible, what are some of the things that you think in your own role for your own department, for your own team that are maybe tedious and repeatable, where AI can, set people up for success and all that.
Yeah. And encourage that creativity and innovation. Encourage it so that people can become really familiar and engage with the new technology, how it can improve their productivity, but within that framework of cybersecurity, safety, governance, so that now it becomes ingrained. In construction or certain industry, you've got the health and safety moment, health and safety discussion with people that's become ubiquitous. We need to do this now with governance and AI because it is becoming ubiquitous itself. So how are you engaging that conversation with the people? It's not just, oh, here's an email. It's asking the question, having conversation, communication, so that people feel comfortable raising their hand if they're not sure if they see some problems.
Mm. So from like a technological perspective for everyone, to what you were just noting there, Pat, there's the culture aspect, and then there's controls to make the safe path the easy path for folks. Shadow AI is going to fail when there's an approved, well-defined path for being able to leverage the tools across the enterprise. So my quick tips and tricks for folks are this. So when you go to adopt the tools, if it's Claude, ChatGPT, or something else, make sure that it's federated with the rest of the systems that you have in place, your identity access management solution, that's Entra ID or Okta or your Google Workspace environment, whatever that may be. Then number two is making sure that when you set up things like single sign-on, that automatically there are controls in place for mapping the role-based access controls, the type of group or role that someone has automatically being mapped to the type of access that they should have for AI plugins and skill packs and all that kind of stuff. So a good example would be making sure that you're using, rather than JIT, which is just-in-time provisioning, more leveraging something like SEIM, where when an employee joins the organization, they automatically can log into Claude. They are automatically getting the group entitlements for their department, for their team. They have the plugins that are accessible, the skills that are accessible for their specific team. And maybe if that individual's role changes, of course, their tenure with the business, when they move to another department structure, all of the access to the tools, to the skill packs, and all that kind of stuff automatically update with them. So that's really helpful there. Making sure we're automatically also deploying the tools in the right way with security configurations defined within them. Leveraging tools like it might be your IT remote monitoring management tool pack, but it might also be something more conventional like Intune. If the applications automatically deploy to managed devices, the managed mobile devices, managed corporate workstations, all that kind of stuff, and it's in front of them, they're more likely going to leverage and utilize that. Even if you didn't get the opportunity to train that person immediately, they can see it. It's a cue that that's the approved company solution because it's already installed on the device. Making sure also in that process that there's a culture aspect of the policies, but having those policies follow governance and design. So when we're configuring ChatGPT or we're configuring Claude, we're defining in the organization system prompt the do's and the don'ts. So this way, if someone makes a mistake or something like that, or they forget something, we're not just relying on that one administrative control and that person hopefully remembering, but the AI will then, as they're interacting with it, guide them in an invisible way towards what they were trying to do, what they were attempting to do, help educate them about, hey, yeah, you can't interact with that type of data, or sorry, I can't help you with that type of thing right now. If you want to talk more about that, reach out to the compliance team here at this email address. Those are really, really helpful things. Having it where even in your organization system prompt, when someone starts to talk to ChatGPT or Claude, every time they start a new conversation, it says, "Hey, and remember, if you got any questions about AI use or any compliance items or anything like that, you can always reach the compliance officer or the compliance team or the security team at this email address." Like those are all helpful nudges from a technology control standpoint to make sure that people feel comfortable with their adoption of AI. That being noted, then once they're starting to leverage those tools and they're starting to leverage them in the processes, then there is that aspect of, well, where is the human oversight component? And I think, Pat, that's perfect for you to kind of talk a little bit about all the different ways there's like humans in the loop or in the process, so to speak. You want to educate the team about this?
Yeah, I mean, as a segue here, it's important what your role in terms of, technology, having the visibility, having the control. You need those controls, those technical controls. There's absolutely critical to have because it raises the security protocol of the entire organization. But really, at the end of the day, it's humans that are interacting with this technology.
Mhm.
So the human in the loop configuration for me is, risk based, where when you have a high risk, interaction, when you're talking about, credit lending, decision for hiring, clinical diagnostic, depending on the industry, you've got high risk interaction, high risk data, high risk function, and high risk uh, um, you know, functions. It's a really important to have higher level of human interaction, human in the loop, so that you can't ask the system to ask autonomously. A human must actively authorize the action of your AI because those critical data sets or these critical functions or transaction need to have that human in the loop all the time to make sure that it is, the production, how it's being used, and the output is validated. Now, depending on the risk, you've got medium risk and low risk. You can have the human on the loop for high volume stuff, with medium risk, where you've got systems that act by default, but that the human actively monitors the ongoing system, to have that chain of thought to make sure that it is validated. And then for the low risk, but high, you've got the high function where you can't have the human in the loop. Agentic AI, in today's environment, well, chain of thought, good luck. You can't explain. But before it goes anywhere, before it goes in production, before the output goes out to people, you need to be able to have the human to validate the output. Okay, so depending on the risk profile, depending on the function, depending on the workflow, the human needs to be there at every function, but it's all risk based. So it doesn't overwhelm people. But what is your task? What's the visibility? And how can you document it? Because when the shit hits the fan, because let's be clear, Christian, and I think you'll agree with me, it's not if something's going to happen, it's when.
Yeah.
Okay. So how are you going to explain that to regulators or to the board or to the lawyers because you're going to be sued if you don't have documentary evidence of your process, of how you protected yourself, and basically, being aligned with the NIST framework, with the EU Act, and all these regulations are going to be coming up. You're going to be facing a lot of pain.
That's a natural segue. We got a question that came in from our last session. We didn't get the opportunity to answer, but I think it's perfect. You were just talking about the various different styles of where humans might be involved in agentic processes. Yeah, in the loop, on the loop, being out of the loop, but still in control, in defining it. And the outputs there. So just a couple of weeks back, Anthropic, they put out in the news that their AI models moving forward, all the text that they generate is going to be essentially using a version of the Google Synth ID for watermarking text, and that text, be it if it was copied and paste wherever, has and almost nearly invisible markers to human beings that it's AI generated text and content, but that when put through an algorithm, put through a tool, that it can identify clearly that it
Yeah.
was generated by Claude, and that it was, generally, content that the AI was working with. So from your perspective, for organizations that have now heard, okay, we're now using AI, we've been using Claude for a bit now all the text that's being generated is AI watermarked. Is there any like notes or perspectives you want to put into how the people you've been talking to have been taking that, what their thoughts are about that? Have people been proactively just starting to label their own content for human beings to see that it's AI assisted content?
Well, let's try to demystify, um, the fact that AI is being used every day by a lot of people,
Mhm.
and the labels say, "Oh, if it's AI created, it's bad, it's slop." Well, it is slop and bad if you don't validate it, if you don't check it, if you don't edit it, if you just plug, copy and paste and send it out. Yeah, that's really bad. But to admit that you've been AI assistant, AI enabled in the research, in producing this.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with that, but it's to be open and transparent about it. If you want to put a caveat to it, saying, yeah, okay, we've used AI in our research, in our processes. Nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's just the context of it. And let's make sure that as we move forward and more people are using it, it is how to use it responsibly so that you are open and transparent about it, but you have that human intervention that validates the output, that validates how it's being used, so that you are building credibility because AI can save you hours and hours of work in producing, doing analysis. Nothing, no problem with it, but be open about it. Don't hide from it. Okay. And you mentioned that you've got these watermarks. It took 40 minutes for somebody to come up with a solution to counter that watermark. Okay, just to tell you how people can can circumvent it. But at the end of the day,
Cat and mouse. Although I guess that has something to say with people who use the tools to remove the AI watermarking out of language that was generated by AI, what
yes,
the intent is there from a compliance
yes, but
point.
that's just it.
Like, oh, that might be.
That's the point. That's the point. It's just oh my god, it's bad if I have it. If it's created by AI, it's no, it's not bad. It's bad if you are not vetting it. It's bad if you don't edit it. It's bad if you don't confirm it. Okay, because it invents stuff. Remember,
Maybe you're
AI.
misrepresenting things.
Yeah, exactly. Because AI, you got to remember this. AI is still the genius intern on drugs. Okay, it can invent stuff. It's not going to be accurate. It's going to be sycophantic, and so don't trust it with very critical issues.
Yeah.
Validate it. You wouldn't do that with an intern that comes in, doesn't have the experience, and just produces stuff. Of course, you're going to go through the paper and the output and the report that he or she does.
Yeah.
Well, why do you circumvent or give your authority to an AI
Yeah.
without you verifying it? It doesn't make sense.
Well, I just want to give shout out. So it was a really good question again about our perspectives on AI text watermark and all that. And shout out to John Silver for asking that great question there.
Great question.
So continue forward. So then there's
Yes, sir.
that technical perspective there, right? And so we can kind of think about at the end of the day, where's our data living? Where do we want AI to be interacting with this data? We want to make sure that we're starting to look at the data connectors that we have in place, the permissions that are around those data connectors, because that's going to directly relate to that human on the loop or human in the loop processes. Because of are you going to allow AI to help maybe someone generate a drafted email but not send it, or are you going to permit it to send? That could be a really big problem, right? Are you going to allow AI to just read documents from your Microsoft SharePoint site or your Windows file servers, all that kind of stuff? Or are you going to allow it to write documents there? Are you willing to accept the risk that somebody who is has the permissions all along to accidentally go into SharePoint or into a Windows file server and delete all the documents accidentally, that their AI agent might be able to do that as well, and multiply that by the amount of employees that have access to that file share, right? So those are things that you're going to want to be really cognizant, really aware of, and having those risk-based types of conversations, not just with technology and cybersecurity, but departmental leaders need to understand that. Because at the end of the day, if one department wants to take the risk of saying like, yeah, we want all of our documents to be able to have this read-write access with AI agents, then they're going to have a plan with, okay, well, what happens if AI is going to run through the environment and corrupt all those documents? What's your incident response plan? Do you got backups? How fast can you restore those backups? Because it's not an acceptable answer to say, well, we're going to give it that access, but yeah, if something bad happens, I don't know. I don't know. Or, oh, that's the IT team's problem. That's not a reasonable response to the situation all in all. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to go through and we're going to make sure that we, first and foremost, across the organization, have people in the right departments, have them in the right groups with the right classifications. That allows us to start to use data loss prevention tools, information governance tools, cloud access security broker tools to mitigate the data connectors and the access that people have, and start to think about, okay, as we're doing an audit of all the data connectors that our AI solutions are using to read, write, access, delete, what can it do? And is it actioning on our behalf somewhere? Making sure that you have an inventory of that as well. So every time you're doing some type of data connector review, you're going to be pulling information maybe out of like Google Workspace or your Microsoft 365 environment, where you can see OAuth apps and you could see the connectors and you could see the specific permissions. Like generating a report on that on a monthly basis and reviewing it should start to become a process for the technology team and the cybersecurity team to understand what's changing. And then there should also be a process that's really well defined for staff members to request new data connectors, new things that they want to have across the organization connected with AI. It shouldn't just be, oh yeah, we just got this big open storefront and anyone can just connect whatever they want. It's, okay, this is how we're going to be using it. These are the main solutions. If you guys have any other suggestions of things you want to connect up, here is a Microsoft form. Here is a Notion form. Go put in a request. Put in your request of what you want, how you want it, what you're intending to do with it, and all that. This way it can be evaluated, right? That's all good governance. And more times than not, that'll actually help educate everyone across the enterprise on like, oh, there's this new data set, there's this new connector, there's this new plugin available to everyone, rather than it being an open marketplace that 90% of people don't use, they don't know about, and there's only a couple of power users that are leveraging it, that if everyone else was educated about it, they would have actually gotten probably productive gains, right?
Yes.
In all of that, when we start to leverage these data loss prevention and information governance solutions, that allows us to start to see those prompt interactions. So what's being asked, what's being responded to, how is it being responded, what's the context of that message? Does it look like it's malicious, either from a cybersecurity standpoint, like a prompt injection attack, or is it malicious from a compliance standpoint, where we just got a request that came in from a staff member about seeing if they could access all the social security numbers for employees across the business, and they're not part of the HR department. Actually, even if it was someone part of the HR department, that's still a big problem, right? So those are things you'd want to flag, because those can be indicators of malicious intent, be it if someone had their account compromised by a hacker, or if maybe you have a rogue employee that's performing things that really they shouldn't be, right? Pat, good sir, just
yes, sir.
Get your perspective. Can you talk a little bit about balancing that kind of the high velocity adoption with the governance and the education for folks?
Yeah, that's the $64,000 question here, because really the pace and scope of AI adoption is raising anxiety all over the place. It's how do we do this well? And what you've outlined, and we're a lot of CTOs and CIOs are listening in. Just, oh yeah, I mean, it makes absolute sense. But how do you translate this into business speak that is not being perceived by the board and senior leaders and other function as, oh, it's going to slow us down. It's going to slow us innovation. It's going to slow, business development and creativity. No, if you build this great infrastructure, that infrastructure based on governance, based on security, your cybersecurity, but from a integrated approach, meaning an AI central hub, a tiger team, because it needs to be cross-functional. The approach to AI deployment, AI use, and just risk management as a whole, you've got to break down the silos that exist in the past. AI is transformative. It's accelerating the way we do business. But if you don't build the right infrastructure for AI governance, that's embedded, that's by design, and cybersecurity by design, it's going to blow up in your face. It will be really bad. But if you build your system, you integrate it, and you balance control and policies and training within a cross-functional team, that tiger team that has the pulse of everything that's happening. Okay, so you got compliance and audit and human resources and operations. Everybody's working from the same songbook. So you break down the silos from an AI deployment, AI use perspective, but you also help in terms of communication, in terms of risk management for other risks as well.
Yeah.
So now the tech leaders, those of you that are listening in that may not have been, listened to or get the credibility that they should, now you have a chance to push that new way of doing business, that interagency, that cross-functional team where you play a decisive role, but you're at the table when business decisions and strategic decisions are made so that you can all raise your hand and say, wait a minute, how are we going to be using this? How is AI going to be able to help us achieve our business goals strategically, safely, and the right governance? So it's not about stopping the way people are doing it. We need to rethink how we do business. And if we start from the right foundation with cross-functional team, it will be much easier to scale up and to add new tools and to add new workflows and use cases, because everybody's going to be on the same level of understanding, and it's going to be a collective effort as opposed to be a silo.
In my own line of work, I work with a lot of IT engineers. I work with a lot of technology directors, CTOs, CIOs, and I think the biggest initial challenge for them is, hey, how do I get everyone to understand that AI is not just an IT thing? And
Yes.
I think what you were just noting quite resonates with that challenge that so many IT and cybersecurity professionals are facing, compliance professionals too. Is that it's not just your team, it's not just
Yeah.
your problem
Yeah.
thing. And so the best thing I think that technology professionals, cybersecurity professionals can do, especially when they feel like they don't have a voice right now to getting feedback from other stakeholders, is start with helping educate the universe of
Thank you.
possibilities to business operation leaders and letting them know that the starting point isn't about the securing of something. The starting point isn't about deploying or installing the AI thing. The conversation starts with, what is our business operationally doing today? What is our intent on leveraging AI to take the business to the next level? And do those things fit in the universe of possibilities that AI can do today? And then the governance will, I think, roll out the right carpet there, especially because that gets the buy-in, right, from the
Yes.
top
Yeah.
leadership team.
But this is where the IT people need to be at the table from the start. And that's part of my role. What I've been doing for the last few years is help translate, the technical jargon
Mhm.
into the business development, business objective, to elevate the role of the IT people. Where in the past they were unfortunately, relegated as, yeah, we'll just give it to IT afterwards, after the plan is done, after the deal is done, and then says, yeah, just plug it in. No, that doesn't work that way. And today, because of the pace and the speed of technology and how AI can actually help tremendously in business development and workflows and use cases, you need to be at the table. This is where the Tiger team, you and I, have been promoting and will continue to promote, is having that discussion right from the start and having the voice so that you can influence strategic and tactical decisions so that it's the flow and the workflow and how it's being deployed is going to be way, way, way easier. And where you can bring value to the organization, real value. Protect the profitability, augment the productivity, but in a controlled, governance way, ethical way, if you wish.
So I know on the horizon here, we got a lot of playbooks and other content that we'll be putting out.
Yep.
For all of my technology professional friends, one of the things I just want to call out is there will be a lot of content. So continue to follow both Pat, myself, as well as our organizations on LinkedIn, but some different playbooks for various footprints of organizations, different types of industries, different type of tech stacks on the security controls that could be implemented and the governance controls from a technology standpoint. So here's a perfect example of a workbook that essentially we leverage with a lot of the organizations we collaborate with that are Microsoft 365 centric organizations. They all already have things like E5 licensing in place. So that means they get entitlements to Microsoft Purview and all that kind of stuff. And so that means that like we can use that as a starting point. Some of the other tool or some of the tools that we already have at our disposal to start to get our hands around the problem, right? That's the discovering the shadow AI, inventorying our data, understanding the roles and the permissions across all the information systems, the SharePoint sites, all that kind of stuff. And then starting to say, okay, this is what we want AI to interact with. This is what we don't want AI to interact with. This is where we want to stop those interactions. So again, for our listeners here, continue to, again, follow us on social media. You guys will get to see some of these playbooks come out here shortly, some white papers and deep dives. My other quick call out for our friends on the technology side is agentic oversight. I know we haven't gotten we're not going to get a ton of time to really dive into this as much as I love to. Maybe we'll hit on it in our last session a little bit further, but right now, there's a lot of agentic or pseudo-agentic tools that are out there. So be it if it's Perplexity with their computer control, or ChatGPT with their web browser and computer control, or Claude with their web browser and computer control. Some things to just kind of be aware of. Generally speaking, right now, you do not get a ton of oversight from a compliance API or from like an open telemetry log standpoint. You might know what tools are being invoked, but you don't know what exact clicks are happening and what things are occurring. So as I always like to call it like clear no-go zones for organizations that are trying to adopt AI responsibly. Having everyone at the organization have AI just use their computer agentically is a pretty big no-go zone, in my opinion, if you want to start leveraging agentic AI, where it's going to be interacting with applications, websites, and content, driving a computer or a web browser, so to speak. Really, that requires the approach of being just a little bit more fragmented, right? Building a sandbox environment is not going to be by default connected to all the company's information systems and be onboarded in all the regular information systems for the organization. That's a clear area for things to go wrong quite quickly. Also, ensuring that as you deploy this into a sandbox, that you're thinking about having the rest of your security and compliance auditing controls in place, your endpoint detection response software, limiting the amount of controls that the AI has in regards to what types of tools it can install, what types of boundaries it might have with the content or the websites that it's browsing or interacting with, making sure it can't escalate its permissions easily or anything like that. And also ensuring that you're deploying things like your security event management collectors to that, so you can see when there's abnormal behavior that's occurring within that sandbox. That's really, really important to be cognizant that that moment where you're just handing over mouse and keyboard control to something, that's a massive shift from everything else that we've talked about in this series so far. And that's a higher degree of sandboxing, pragmatism, security controls, compliance oversight, and auditing before someone just jumps right into it. If someone was looking to maybe have a quick way to, skip all the rigmarole and have an AI agent do some web browsing stuff, agentically and all that, but not have to worry about all the setup. There are certain solutions that are out there, not sponsored, not a partner or anything like that, but there are solutions that are out there like browser-based, which are essentially an API, browser as a service, for AI agents to also leverage and utilize. This way, those activities are sandboxed. They're not touching your ecosystem. And then you fetch back the data you want. You can then munge that data however you please, and then have that go into the rest of your business operation pipeline. So I know I threw a lot at folks here with that one, but again, continue to follow Pat and myself. You guys will get more insights also on the agentic deep dive as well. So Pat, I know we are just about at time.
Yep.
Any last closing item you have?
Yes, I'd like to invite and challenge your IT colleagues that are listening in, okay, to take a leadership role here and reach out to your ethics compliance person. When you want to build that tiger team, that AI governance committee, reach out to your first partner, the ethics and compliance people, and build on that to really change the culture within the organization. Because the speed and scope, again, of agentic AI, is such a, you're not alone. You shouldn't be alone. This is a collective effort, a collective responsibility. But reach out to champions, reach out to partners that will help you scale up, okay? So now it becomes part of the ethos, part of the infrastructure of the organization, but you can't do it alone. And this, it's going to be, do it iteratively, but your challenge is to take ownership of it, reach out, build build a team, destroy the silos. So now when you have a policy or a control in place, it will be done much more easy, as opposed to, oh, here's IT again giving us this email and we can't do this. Ah, crap. Yeah. No, now it's part of the general approach to business performance and workflows, but it's done from a collective effort. So you now are part of the bigger team. And believe me, it's going to elevate the role and responsibility and the credibility of your function, because now it's not going to be on the side. It's going to be part of the whole.
Well, Pat, thank you for all the awesome insights. As always, good sir. I think today's conversation shows that the goal to give people guardrails that they can follow is practically achievable, both from a culture standpoint and from a technological standpoint. And that as you break down the barriers and you provide an easy path forward for folks, that's going to reduce resistance. That's going to reduce that shadow AI use across the firm. As a reminder to everyone on the call with us here, so our next webcast is going to be on September 9th. And that is going to be probably my most favorite session. That's going to be breaking the AI before someone else does, with AI red teaming. Oh, I love me.
Oh, yeah. You're excited.
So that's going to be a really fun one there. Again, as a reminder for everyone, continue to follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube. There's the masterclass series link that I'll just pull up here again. This way everyone has that as well. And we got, after that session, we'll be tying a bow on everything that we've been covering over the last couple months here. So I'm really, really excited about that. So everyone, thank you so much again for joining us. We really appreciate it. Keep all the good comments, questions coming.
Reach out to us.